Hello everyone, it's Theme Park Avenue, I am Eric. When you think of the best roller coasters in the world, surely your mind goes to super thrilling ones. Things with grand hills of 200, 300, 400 feet. Or the most intense elements, things like the Mosasaurus roll, or the Death Roll on Iron Gwazi. And yes, if I made a list of my top 10 roller coasters I call the top 10 best, then yeah, those kinds of rides would be on there. However, when I think about my top 10 favorite roller coasters, truly the rides where I think about them and I immediately think, oh yeah, I love that one. It's an absolute icon in terms of what it means in my roller coaster life, and it's perfectly executed in nearly every regard, even if it's not one that a lot of people super talk about. And in that top 10 list, you would find Big Bear Mountain. Big Bear Mountain is a family coaster at Dollywood. It is their newest roller coaster, and their longest in fact. It's not really anything super mind-blowing. Its height does not get anywhere near tallest in the world, tallest in the park even. The speed, it's pretty mild. There's no crazy elements. The theming isn't especially expensive. And honestly, there's nothing about it on its own that seems like, oh yeah, that's definitely one of the best roller coasters in the world, or something one would call their favorite. And yet, it is for me. Why is that? Well, let's talk about how Dollywood was able to make Big Bear Mountain a near perfect, if not completely perfect, family coaster. I'll draw some comparisons to some other family coasters throughout this one, but ultimately, it comes down to a strict balance. That balance is very, very difficult to hit, but it comes down to being a fun ride for older riders while also being more than manageable and entertaining for kids. Because the whole reason this is one of my favorite roller coasters out there is that it is at an amusement park. They're not thrill parks, they're not scream parks, they are amusement parks. Because at their core, they seek to amuse, to give you a fun time. And Big Bear Mountain is about as fun as it gets. The main thing that stands out with this ride is the fact that the whole way through, I have a smile on my face. Why is that? Should we go through the layout? Piece by piece, talk about each element and why it's great? No, because that's not a thing. The ride isn't full of standout elements. It's a bunch of bank turns, very whippy ones, that don't do a whole lot. You're definitely not getting thrown out of your seat basically ever on this ride. So why is it great? Well, let's compare it to another family coaster. Technically at least. Hagrid's Magical Creatures Motorbike Adventure at Universal's Islands of Adventure. That ride has a 48-inch height requirement, so technically you might not be a kid anymore when you can finally get on it. But the thing that stands out about that ride is that it costs 12 Kingdacas to build. $300 million, at least that's what was reported. And yeah, it's expensive. You have a ton of trees, you have a grand building with a drop track, you have all these arches, animatronics. So clearly, Universal put a huge amount of money into the ride. But it does have a shortcoming, and that is the fact that while it has alright music that's kind of intense at points and some fun narration, it keeps slowing down to be like, hey look, an animatronic we spent money on. You should totally ride it. And I don't know. It's definitely still a great ride, but ultimately it is kind of not the best ride out there like some say. I definitely don't have a smile the whole time. There are individual parts I like. I like the drop track. I like the centaur that you can see in the scary dark forest part. The whole Devil's Snare idea is cool. It's a beautiful looking ride. But unfortunately, it doesn't come together as an extremely fun experience for me. I know for some it does, but what does Big Bear Mountain do that's better? I'm sure you're wondering. Well, first of all, it costs way less money to make, but it works because it is completely focused on just being a fun, long ride. There's something about that sort of experience. The Beast at Kings Island, for example, or Raging Bull at Six Flags Great America. Long rides that aren't necessarily blowing you away with elements, but just give you a grand, sweeping tour of a certain part of the park. Mind you, the Beast also has the terrifying evil helix at the end, but besides that, these rides are long, technically uneventful, but feel so much fun. And they're definitely easy contenders for that top 10 favorite list I was talking about. Big Bear Mountain is also a long, technically uneventful ride. What does it have? You have a small, light launch out of the station, you have some turns, you have a hill, but what works so well here is the way it tells a story. And sure, Hagrid tells a story too. You're on a magical creature motorbike adventure with Hagrid. And it's all very nice, and it's well handled, but it definitely bites off more than it can chew, and it's a tad obnoxious in that regard. This one is simply, you go out on a roller coaster to find Big Bear. Not a ton to it, but you have some onboard audio to help you out with the story, and that onboard audio is hands down the best I've experienced on any roller coaster. Partially because the main song for this ride is unbelievable. It matches the absolute best soundtracks for roller coasters. An incredible fiddle. There's not a whole lot else to it, but it's such an intense but beautiful track. And it gets super intense before the launches and leading into elements, and as you stop the slow crest over the one hill, it picks back up again. And you're like, yes, every time. It's fantastic. That is perfection. No roller coaster I've ever been on uses music to build suspense like that. You can have some fun with Hollywood Rip Ride Rocket when you're listening to Stop Hammer Time right before you go over the hill. That's nice and all, but this enhances the ride like no other. And then you have, on top of the great music, narration. The narration is very fun because the main thing you have is quips. Perhaps the funniest being bear right, no, bear left, telling you which way to go, but also because it's Big Bear. A simple pun, but a charming one kids would love, and I'm sure most adults like, unless they're completely stone-faced heartless people. Okay, that's a bit harsh, but I definitely think this is a very fun part of the ride. The ride also happens to look beautiful. It is new, so naturally the paint holds up well so far. But you have a fun setting, and so far it is mainly just large flat area with not a ton of foliage, but they are working on that. But even so, you can look out to Wildwood Grove and the rest of the park, because you're still adventuring through Dollywood is what it feels like. You go through the beautiful rock tunnel over by the water, you might get a little misted, and I think the fact that it is Big Bear Mountain means the Rocky Hill setting still works. And while it will probably be enhanced by a more forested setting, there's really no reason to complain about it now. The way it works with that terrain, similarly, is unbelievable. It feels like you're always hugging the ground when you're not on the biggest hills, and I think it was a very nice decision to have that, because it does still feel like you're kind of on the land. You're not on a roller coaster necessarily, you're in this truck going around to find Big Bear. And at the very end, there's a tunnel, you hear the roar, and they think it's Big Bear, but we don't know for sure, leaves it open-ended, and definitely leaves for kids wanting to go on again, trying to find Big Bear next time. Brilliance. I know this is mainly just me talking about things I like on a family roller coaster, but this truly is an adventurous ride. It holds a consistent speed the whole time except for the parts where it slows down to match the music, or the music matches it slowing down, but I think that coordination is beautiful. No other roller coaster quite pulls that off. Very few have onboard audio, and this one is the best of them. As far as family coasters go, it's hard to strike this kind of balance. Some completely sacrifice being roller coasters like Escape from Gringotts and go all out in the theming. Others sacrifice being super digestible for kids like the Schwarzkopf loopers that have 42-inch height requirements but aren't really ideal for families. And then there are some that have some small theming elements but just don't really do a ton. The first that comes to mind for me with that regard is, in general, most Wild Mouse coasters have a small bit of theming to them, or even some renowned rides. I can't be too mean to this one, but Slinky Dog Dash, I haven't been on it, but it definitely looks a bit more where it just doesn't have the fun vibe to it that this one sets with that great music. I can't be sure on that one, maybe I'm wrong, but if you think I'm wrong, feel free to invalidate the Slinky Dog Dash part. But moving on, there's not a whole lot else to say. It's just a ride I adore. Getting on at night for a nighttime Big Bear adventure is unbeatable, and frankly, the best night ride besides the Lightning Rod in the park, which is a very high honor. I don't know what else to say. It's a ride I go on over and over again, the one time I went to the park anyway. Probably my most reridden coaster at the park. And while not everyone is going to feel the same way, I think the fact that it looks beautiful, sounds beautiful, is fun and thrilling enough for kids and adults alike. And all three of those things I just said work in tandem is unbeatable. And therefore, even if it is ultimately just kind of a long family launch coaster with no noteworthy elements, it is one of my favorite roller coasters, and in my opinion, the best family coaster I've ever been on, and very likely the best family coaster in the world. Thank you for watching. This one was another stream of consciousness, unscripted video just talking about something I like. Comment down below if you want to see more of these, thoughts on some roller coasters I like, dislike, subscribe for more of that content, including the big 10-year anniversary special that's coming up soon. I'll see you next time.